Joining us now is elections correspondent at The Federalist, Brianna Lyman. Brianna, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start off by speaking about the Epstein and JFK files because there's growing frustration over the handling of these files. We know Pam Bondi is being slammed for her handling of the Epstein files. She's been AG for more than a month, and the American people have been promised to get some truth and transparency, yet nothing new has really come to light so far. What's your take? Are we ever going to get all of these files?
We should, out of respect for the victims of this whole Epstein sex trafficking case. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are the only two people in the world who have sex trafficked young children to apparently nobody else. And I think what's really important about this movement is you see people on MAGA and on the conservative side who are still fighting, their own party, so to speak, right? Pam Bondi, she is on the MAGA side, and they're saying, no, we want these released. So I think it's indicative of a party that is based in values and morals and wants answers to this horrific crime.
Okay, we are standing by for an update on that one. I know there's plenty of frustration because we want the truth. Now, federal immigration authorities have arrested a Palestinian graduate student who played a key role in the disgusting anti-Israel protests that took place at Columbia University. Mahmoud Khalil, he helped lead the protest movement that, as we all saw, turned violent, and he's essentially the first person arrested as the Trump administration cracks down on the college campus protests that have just really let anti-Semitism fester. We've heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He said that the administration will be revoking the visas and all green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported. But an update this morning is that a judge has blocked efforts to deport Mahmoud Khalil, which is just insane. Why should Hamas supporters be allowed to stay in America?
Your guess is as good as mine. The idea here that this Syrian-born Palestinian activist who espouses anti-American and anti-West values, part of one of the protests he's actually been involved in some capacity, wants to tear down the West, right? So everything he believes is antithetical to the United States. And to try and defend that by saying, well, he deserves free speech, it is risible to believe that our founders would have said, well, of course, an anti-American terrorist sympathizer should be allowed to stay in the United States because of free speech, right? Free speech came with a responsibility, and Americans have a responsibility to protect their country. When you allow foreigners to come here who have cultures that hate America, what do you think that does to our fabric and our society?
Absolutely. And Donald Trump, well, his administration has pulled $400 million from Columbia University due to the Ivy League school's failure to really cut out anti-Semitism on campus. We all saw that. The Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, said that universities must comply with all federal anti-discrimination laws if they're going to receive federal funding. For too long, Columbia has abandoned that obligation to Jewish students studying on its campus. And today we demonstrate to Columbia and other universities that we will not tolerate their appalling inaction for any longer. Wow, it's a powerful statement, and they are not mucking around. It's really showing all universities that they won't stand for this anymore, that they're not going to be getting funding when this type of dangerous behaviour that we all witnessed time and time again, especially last year, was allowed to take place.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately a year and a half too late. We had a very feckless administration, and these aren't just regular protests we're seeing on college campuses. You have intimidation of Jewish students. You have protesters violently breaking down and destroying property on Columbia, for example. Jewish students in particular, are not able to get to their classes. And so if Columbia wants to receive federal funding, they have to make sure that they are enforcing anti-discrimination laws. And it's a real shame that it took Columbia possibly losing money for them to finally step up and do what they should have done a long time ago.
Absolutely, and it shows that this could have been done last year under Joe Biden, but it takes a new president. Let's talk about the Democrats. They are living in another reality. Texan Democrat Jasmine Crockett has gone on MSNBC's The Katie Phang Show to insist that it's actually not a crime to enter the country illegally. Let's take a listen.
It is not a criminal violation to enter the country illegally. It's not a criminal. It's a crime. It's not a crime, which is why they're so frustrated, because they really want our local law enforcement to go out and round up people when they could be looking out for the murderers and the sexual abusers as well as the robbers. They want them to go and round people up on civil accusations.
Yeah, someone should have told her it is a crime. And last week she went on MSNBC to call Donald Trump an enemy of the state. I mean, are you surprised to hear this? I suppose no wonder she and other Democrats are so upset if they're not across the facts that entering the US illegally is against the law.
Yeah, I mean, look, if she wants to continue to be this, quasi-face of the Democratic Party, we welcome that because it just highlights that the Democratic Party is not capable of winning an election. This election was a referendum in large part on immigration alone. Americans don't want mass illegal or legal immigration anymore, and they do see that crossing the border is a crime if you don't do it at a designated port of entry. And what we saw under Joe Biden, 180,000 migrants coming in just a month. They weren't all coming through ports of entry, right? They were crossing illegally. So she doesn't understand the law. And she also doesn't seem to understand that most of the country is not in lockstep with her. But that's been the problem for Democrats these past few months.
Absolutely. Elections correspondent at The Federalist, Brianna Lyman, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Thanks for having me.